I think that in Ireland at the moment, there is a predominant way of thinking about gender identity. And I think it's important that diverse viewpoints are heard, not on transgender people. I actually saw a tweet before I came in and it said, we're talking about transgender life in Ireland. And I thought, oh no, I'm in the wrong show. I can't talk about transgender life in Ireland. I'm not transgender. So I thought I was here to talk about gender identity theory and the issues more broadly.
And that is an issue that we're interested in because, you know, whether we like it or not, that's how that is played out online. That's how it's played out in social forums. And that does have an impact as well, I think, on the transgender community in Ireland. So in terms of it as an idea, you believe it's an ideology, isn't that right?
No, I don't. I actually steer clear of using the term ideology because I think that's quite derogatory. I think that I'm an academic, I lecture in world religions, and so I come at it as from the perspective of it being a belief system. I think it's really important for people who have a gender identity that they can express that and that they can talk about it. I also think some people, not everybody has a gender identity. And I think there are many religious parallels between gender identity theory and different religious systems. For example, there is a level of faith required. There is, gender identity is not something that's tangible. It's often included with
When you say it's not something that's tangible, what does that mean? Because I mean, from talking to Rebecca, you might come in on this.
For Rebecca, it's very real, and I appreciate
very real.
that.
And for Cody, also,
and I don't
very
mean
real.
I don't mean to denigrate your experiences or anything like that. What I'm saying is that for me, I personally don't have a gender identity. Gender identity is a relatively new concept. It began in the 1950s in America with the treatment of intersex. Now that's called differences of sexual development. For me, gender identity there is a theory, and the theory is that people have an internal sense of their gender and that's separate to their body. And I suppose from somebody who doesn't subscribe to it, it means that for me the body is important rather than the
biological sex on that.
Yes. And my concern is, can I just make one more point, Claire, is that in Ireland today, there is an element that people who don't subscribe to it, we are demonised and are treated like blasphemers and heretics. There's new hate speech coming out.
Do you know what? We're going to get into more of this discussion. I want to bring Richard in on you know, as someone who works with people who are questioning their gender identity and hearing different views this evening. What do you believe the challenges are around this whole area?
Well, we have to be honest, it's a difficult topic, right? And we shouldn't shy away from it. We should be able to talk about it. We should be able to hear Colette's views, and we should be able to respectfully have discourse with those views, and we have to hear Rebecca's views, and we hear Mark's views. We all have to hear each other's views, and that we don't cancel each other. We allow the discourse to happen so that we can have a broad understanding of this complex issue. And it is a complex issue. And from my point of view, I suppose, listening and working with teenagers for many years around this issue, and I hear what Colette's saying about the belief system, you have to believe in God, and you have to believe, I hear those ideas. What I really heard Rebecca speaking about there was what I work with all the time, and that's internalised prejudice. Yeah. And that's something that's societal, that's a construct around society. And we feed that into our children. And when things like, you know, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith comes out in 21 and says that God can't bless sin, that's feeding into really negative ideas that if you're sitting there as a child, if you're sitting there as a young adult, or if you're sitting there as an adult and you're married and you don't feel like you're in the right, you know, in the right gender, it's a misapprehension here is that a transgendered girl or a trans girl is a boy dressing as a girl, or that it's some sort of sexual fantasy. Is absolutely the wrong. It's just an erroneous idea. That's a girl whose identity is incongruent to the body that they found themselves in.
Yeah, is that how you feel now when you hear? Can you relate to that when you hear what Richard says there?
To a point I can, but also it's like I'm listening to people that have never had to struggle with their gender. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that, Rebecca.
It's very easy
apologies.
for people to kind of come up with that. You know, this was never a choice for me. Do you know what I mean? If I was to have a choice back then, it would not have had to go through this, you know? Also, when I hear religion, it kind of really upsets me because I still have my religion. I'm still a Catholic. You know, I come from, in my head, a loving God, not a God that's going to demonize me because, you know, I put to me, I just put right what science got
and
wrong,
the
or
idea
whatever.
that we
you
do
know.
hear from proponents, I suppose, of where you're coming from, that it is a religion, the gender identity as being a religion and something that you believe or you don't believe. What do you make of that?
Like, I mean, that kind of drove me in many ways when I did transition and I lost my career and I lost everything over it. And I was still, like, I was brought up a Catholic. So in my head, then I did think that maybe I am evil. Maybe this isn't right thinking. And it took me down a road where people that aren't trans need to understand. It took me down a road of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, of having to be a sex worker, having to do all these things that were not on my to-do list, but I had to do because my career was taken from me. And all I wanted to ever be was me. So people like me, as people like to talk, pay the highest price just to be ourselves.